like I said in the beginning, this is a movie about a group of traveling performers who do. It's not exactly a Renaissance fair, like if you go to, say, the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair or the Maryland Renaissance Fair, where they have an established village, and you've got people selling their wares and it's mass produced stuff or crafts. What I do like about the Ren Fair is there are people who are actual craftsmen there, and I've bought not mass-produced swords, not mass-produced archery sets. I mean, you can buy that stuff there as well. That stuff is definitely for sale.
They brew beer.
They brew their own beer and wine and everything.
Yeah.
But it's a mix, and it's there is something very corporate about a Renaissance fair that is in a particular place, because there are laws that they have to follow and everything, right? This is not what these guys are. These are a traveling group of performers, and there's something inherently like that feels medieval about that. I mean, it's not. I mean, honestly, we had traveling circuses up until recently, so like this was just a thing that people have done for centuries, and this is kind of part of the dying of that era of art, right? So what they do is they're a small group, and they pull into town, and they put on a performance of, it's like jousting, but they're on motorcycles, on dirt bikes and whatnot. They're in, kind of homemade suits of armor. Obviously there's food tents, and there's, arts and crafts. So like most of the focus is on the guys on bikes, the knights. But there are other people involved as well, and you get to see these other people. There are musicians, there are different kinds of artisans, there are jugglers and performers.
There's an MC.
There's an MC, Pippin.
Yeah.
Who I found it interesting that his name was Pippin, if only because it made me think, oddly enough, not of Lord of the Rings, but it could easily be a reference to Lord of the Rings, or it could be a reference to the musical Pippin, which is also like set in the Middle Ages, but is a contemporary thing, and not irrelevant actually. In fact, I wonder if... In fact, I wish I knew if Romero was referencing Lord of the Rings by naming him Pippin, or the musical Pippin. They both work, because they're both coming out of the same sort of thing.
You had him in your classroom.
I know. I actually met George Romero once, and I didn't even think to ask him.
Ugh.
And I had just seen Pippin, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've read Lord of the Rings more than once.
Jeez.
Oh, I know. I'm an idiot. All right, look, he's only been dead 5 years. No, wait, more than that now. I don't even know what year it is. Yeah, but anyway, yeah. So it is not just guys on bikes, but it's a lot of other people are part of this community, and they are intentionally meant to be a community where you have these group meetings in order to decide things. But at the same time, King William, Billy, played by Ed Harris, is the ultimate authority on things. So you have that kind of...
In the first 30 minutes, it's almost like a documentary of this place.
Yeah.
Like like there's not a lot of plot going on. It's just like, this is the setting. This is where we're going to be, who we're spending our movie with.
I didn't think of it at the time, but you're right. There is an almost documentary element to the beginning of this, where we're just hearing overheard bits of conversation. There's a scene where they're with Little John, who is like the weapons master, and he's saying, no, you guys saw all the way through, or most of the way through, these lances, because we don't want actually people to get hurt. So you're overhearing like the way that they set up and run their show, and the things that they're trying to take care of. Like they try to use foam weapons. They're not actually trying to hurt each other necessarily. And we're instantly then introduced to the tension, because you have the one guy, Morgan, who's like got an actual mace, and he's like, no, I want to use this real weapon, and everybody's just like, dude, you cannot do that. And Morgan is played by Tom Savini. But yeah, I like that the first half hour is just letting you kind of get an idea of what this world is and what their show is like.
Now again, we've been to like Ren fairs. You can tell there's a macho thing going on with a lot of those dudes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think the film, is really good at exploring the tension between, we want to create an alternate world to the one that we're living in, where, because you want to understand, like, the crew of people who do this show, it's not just a bunch of white guys on horseback or whatever. I get frustrated, because as somebody who is fascinated both by the Middle Ages and fantasy, there is always a dangerous sort of element of white supremacists kind of barging in on all of that. On the one hand, there is a sort of strain of interest in the Middle Ages that is about reestablishing a patriarchal white supremacist order that the people who are into this see modern democracy as decadent and the upsetting of a natural hierarchy, an order of being that, and this is why things are chaotic now. And if we just Return with a V, okay? Y'all know what I'm talking about. Return with a V. It's based on a bullshit understanding of what the Middle Ages were. That's right. I can curse on this because this is the Patreon. That's right. But it is a bullshit understanding of what the Middle Ages were, because the Middle Ages are actually very complicated, and it's, you're talking about like 1,000 years from the end of the Western Roman Empire to the discovery of, the Western Hemisphere.
Well, almost all of our concept of the Middle Ages is filtered through the 19th century.
Yes.
And 19th century Britain.
Yeah.
Which we know is...
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Not that enlightened.
Oh God, no. No, quite the opposite. And in fact, like the interest in the Middle Ages and Romanticism and nationalism and all that stuff, when you're getting into the 19th century, this is all tied up with things like colonialism and the gradual emancipation of people, the extension of democracy to first working class men, and then, eventually in the 20th century to everyone, at least by law, if not by practice. The fact that ours, and when I say ours, I mean, American understanding of the Middle Ages is through a terrible lens that is incredibly incomplete. Because,
incidentally, Ursula Le Guin. You gotta read Ursula Le Guin.
I have to read more Ursula Le Guin.
You gotta read Earthsea.
You're right. I do.
Yeah.
I do. I liked The Dispossessed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
You have that strain. What you have to understand about what this group of people in the film are, though, they are black, they are queer, they are gender nonconforming. You have a female knight. You have a woman mechanic. You have people who are counterculture.
Like, nobody bats an eye at any of this.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, everybody it's meant to be this inclusive utopian idea of a society where it doesn't matter what your race, your sex, your gender, your disabilities. That's not meant to ever be a barrier into your full participation in that society. Because all the decisions, they have to have these meetings. It's very much that sort of, we have to sit down and all come to an idea together. That kind of quasi-anarchist, utopian thing. In the end of the day, though, everything can always be overruled by Billy. So you have that tension inherent. If you're going to have a leader, you don't really have anarchy, right? Anarchy, like the good kind, as opposed to anarchy, the bad kind, which is what ends up happening. If you have a leader, how democratic is it? You end up with a tension that I don't think can ever actually be resolved. Look, I'm a pessimist at heart, so of course I think that.
And also, like, this could easily turn into a cult. Extremely easily. Like vulnerable people and someone that looks like frickin' Ed Harris.
Yeah.
Of course you're going to follow that guy around, give him all your money or whatever.
And the thing is, like, they talk about that. They say, like, he has some sort of line like, people are going to think I'm Jim Jones or something.
Yeah.
And so he's aware of the dangers of what he does and keeps trying to minimize it.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. When you are a charismatic person that people put their trust into, when you are a leader, you are a very dangerous person no matter who you are.
Yeah.
And Billy understands this. And I think that's one of the most interesting things about his character is he knows how dangerous he is. And it's his own attempts at decency and trying to keep people, together that keeps that at bay, and I think the film is kind of saying, like, anytime you are somebody who tries to be in charge, it's such a dangerous thing because it invites dissension. Just the creation of a hierarchy invites dissension from that hierarchy. They are a group that exists in order to get away from a society that is conformist and patriarchal and full of beer swilling wife beaters and all the rest of that. Empty lives in the suburbs. They're trying to get away from that. But in doing that, can you ever really truly escape those things? can you be successful? It's really hard. And this is, I think, also a film about the struggle of trying to not be those things when that is the society that you still live in, whether you want to or not. Because you're going to pull into town and the cops are going to ask for a payout. And if you don't pay them off, you are going to get beat up and tossed in jail. Because even if you've left society when you're amongst your friends, you've never really truly left society.
Yeah.
What I love is like even the people who are not performers but are like kind of tangential to the group, like their lawyer Steve or the guy who drives the bus. What's his name? Like Bagman.
Yeah.
Bagman, you know, like he was it sounds like he was like a freedom rider in the 60s. So like he was used to getting beat up by cops and you know, nearly killed. I think they like his lawyer had some other like social justice thing that he was doing in the 60s. So like you know, this is intentionally talking about you know, we're all these people who were part of the civil rights movement or the anti-war movement or all this stuff, you know, back in the 60s and in the 70s, and the world has moved on without us. Because it's 1980 when they're filming this. It's 1981 when it comes out. And this is the world that Reagan is going to just scoop up and destroy.